Welcome to the Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture in Spokane, Washington. This is a special tour designed for school groups. In this tour, you will see artifacts from the exhibit Pompeii, the Immortal City. To get started, we'll go over some museum words that I will be using, just to make sure we all know what these words mean. The first word is gallery. You have probably heard this word before, and you may think of it as a place where you can see art, or a wall of pictures in your home, or even the place in a smartphone where you can find photos. In a museum, a gallery is a room where we can display things. At the MAC, we have 5 galleries, and that just means we have 5 big rooms where we can display objects, and it changes from time to time what we have on display. The second word is exhibit. You have probably heard this word too, and I've already mentioned that the exhibit we will see on this tour is Pompeii, the Immortal City. Exhibit is the topic or theme that connects all of the objects that go together. The Pompeii exhibit is pretty big, and it actually takes up 4 of our museum galleries. The third word is artifact. You might be familiar with this word, and you may have a pretty specific idea of what an artifact is. A common answer I hear from students at the museum is that an artifact is something old, and we will definitely see some very old objects on this tour. I'd also like to help us think of other kinds of artifacts, because artifacts can actually be all kinds of things. They can be things from another time period, pieces of history. They can also be pieces of art. They can be things found in the natural world, like rocks and minerals and fossils. And they can be things made by human hands. I like to sum it all up by saying an artifact is an object that tells a story. Today, all of our artifacts will be telling us the story of Pompeii. So let's start there. What is Pompeii? Some of you may already know that Pompeii is an ancient Roman city. You may know about the volcano, Mount Vesuvius, that erupted and completely covered Pompeii with ash in the year 79 AD. You may also know that there was an earthquake that had already destroyed much of Pompeii just 17 years earlier, in 62 AD. Because of this, many of the pictures we see of the city show it in the process of being rebuilt. Life in ancient Rome was different from our modern life, and much of what we know comes from studying Pompeii. When the volcano erupted, Pompeii and neighboring city Herculaneum were very quickly covered in over 9 feet of ash. This happened suddenly and overnight. There were no survivors, but there was at least one witness from afar. What happened after the eruption was that ash settled into everything and preserved it, which is why we can learn so much from studying the ancient remains. The entire city was petrified. It was not until 1748, almost 2,000 years later, that archaeologists began studying Pompeii, and they found that many things were still in excellent condition despite having been buried for so long. We are going to take a closer look at a few of the artifacts from this exhibit. I selected artifacts that I think tell a great story about this ancient town, and also ones that are favorites of students who have seen the exhibit in person. Let's start in the first gallery. In this exhibit, each gallery has a different focus. In our first gallery, the focus is Roman craftsmen and technicians. This is where we will see examples of metalworking, stonemasonry, and glasswork. Let's first look at this crane. It's called a calcatoria, and it has a large wheel in the shape of a cage within which men would walk. This is an example of some of the machinery found in the ruins of Pompeii, which was used to rebuild large buildings after the earthquake. The model seen in this exhibit is 1/10 the size of an actual calcatoria. We wouldn't be able to fit a full-size model in our building, but having a model does allow us to see how it would have worked. The men who would have worked a machine like this were slaves, and 3 or 4 men would walk inside the large wheel to make it move. On the end of the crane, way up at the top, there would be a large, heavy stone. More slaves would have the job of directing the stone into place on the top of a building. Our next gallery focuses on practical science in Pompeii. Many people admire the way the ancient Romans used science and technology that seemed to be ahead of their time. You may already know something about Roman aqueducts, which is their famous system of delivering water to every part of the city. The ancient Romans were also able to conduct medical procedures that have not changed much in nearly 2,000 years. Take a look at these medical tools, which are similar to things you may see in a doctor's office today. Let's take a closer look at this odometer. An odometer is a tool for measuring the distance a vehicle travels, and there have been many versions invented over time, including one by Benjamin Franklin and another by pioneers on the Oregon Trail. The first, however, was this one. It uses a 400-tooth cogwheel attached to a chariot wheel. 400 rotations of a chariot wheel is equal to the distance of 1 Roman mile, and every time the cogwheel moves all the way around, a pebble drops into a box, making it easy to count the miles traveled by the number of pebbles in the box at the end of the journey. Our last gallery focuses on the natural resources surrounding Mount Vesuvius. The region around Pompeii was fertile. Fields of wheat, grapevines, and olive trees shared the land with flocks of sheep. Oxen and horses were used as heavy work animals. The people of Pompeii also raised pigs and, more surprisingly, dormice that were appreciated for their tender meat. The sea was nearby, providing both fish and shellfish, basic ingredients for garum, a sauce that accompanied almost every dish they ate. Let's take a closer look at this bread. It's been preserved by the ash just as everything else, although we'd never think to eat it. You can see how it's been pre-cut to be ready for serving. Pompeii was known for its delicious bread. The grapevines in the area were for making wine, which was popular in Pompeii. This part of a hull of a ship filled with bottles for carrying wine is evidence that the Romans shipped wine from one region to another. Pompeii has been studied for over 200 years, and archaeologists continue to make new discoveries about this ancient city. I hope you enjoyed this tour of Pompeii, the Immortal City, and from everyone at the MAC, we hope to see you at the museum soon.